The wind howled outside, shaking the trees and causing the old windows to rattle in their frames. It was a stormy night, the kind that sent chills down your spine, and I found myself alone at my grandmother's house. The creaks and groans of the old building were familiar sounds, but tonight they held an unsettling edge. Grandma had left for a last-minute trip, leaving me to spend the night in her quaint and weathered home. It was a place filled with memories of warm cookies, cozy blankets, and stories told by the fireplace. But tonight the nostalgia was overshadowed by an undeniable feeling of unease. I curled up on the couch with a book, trying to ignore the strange noises that seemed to echo through the house. The old grandfather clock in the corner chimed, and I jumped, startled by the sudden sound. I glanced at the time. It was almost midnight. With a nervous chuckle, I tried to shake off my unease, attributing the eerie atmosphere to my overactive imagination. As I continued to read, the noises persisted. The distant sound of furniture shifting, soft footsteps that seemed to come from nowhere. I brushed it off as the wind, the house settling. Anything to keep my anxiety at bay. But when a low, almost imperceptible whisper floated into the room, the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I placed the book down and strained my ears, holding my breath. The whisper came again, unmistakably originating from the direction of the basement door. My heart pounded in my chest as I sat frozen, my thoughts racing. Should I investigate, or should I stay put and pretend I hadn't heard a thing? Curiosity, as it often does, won over my fear. With shaky hands, I stood up and made my way to the basement door. The stairs descended into darkness, the weak light from above barely reaching the bottom. The air felt heavy, and a shiver ran down my spine as I hesitated at the top of the steps. With a deep breath, I took the first step down, the wooden stairs groaning in protest beneath my feet. The whispering had ceased, replaced by a silence that felt almost suffocating. My flashlight illuminated the damp walls and cluttered shelves, casting eerie shadows that danced along the edges of my vision. As I descended further, a faint rustling sound reached my ears, accompanied by the unmistakable scent of old books and damp earth. The basement was filled with an assortment of forgotten relics, dusty trinkets, forgotten photographs, and worn-out furniture draped with cloths. I shone my flashlight around, the beam bouncing off forgotten memories that surrounded me. The whispering returned, soft and indistinct, as if carried on a breeze that shouldn't exist in the underground darkness. My heart raced, and I continued forward, drawn to the source of the sound like a moth to a flame. My flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows that seemed to move independently of me. As I reached the far end of the basement, the whispers grew louder, almost frantic. My light settled on an old, heavy wooden door, its surface worn with age and etched with strange symbols. The whispers seemed to emanate from behind the door, their urgency pulling me closer. With trembling hands, I grasped the doorknob and turned it slowly. The door creaked open, revealing a room that was unlike any other part of the basement. The air felt colder here, and a dim light flickered in the corner, casting unsettling shadows along the wall. Rows of shelves lined the room, each one holding glass containers filled with strange liquids and preserved specimens. My heart hammered in my chest as I approached the shelves, my flashlight revealing jars containing twisted forms that defied explanation. Some looked like preserved animals, while others seemed to be fragments of something more sinister. But it was the work table in the center of the room that held the most horrifying secrets. There, under a dim overhead light, lay notebooks filled with handwritten notes, diagrams, and sketches that sent shivers down my spine. The more I read, the more I realized the horrifying truth. My grandmother had been conducting experiments of a most disturbing nature. The note spoke of attempts to merge living creatures with inanimate objects, to unlock the secrets of life and death, and to manipulate the very fabric of reality itself. The sketches depicted grotesque hybrids, part human and part monster, their forms distorted and contorted in unnatural ways. My mind reeled, struggling to comprehend the darkness that had been hidden beneath the surface of my grandmother's seemingly innocent home. The whispers that had drawn me here were no longer distant echoes. They were the voices of the experiments, the agonized cries of the creatures that had been subjected to my grandmother's twisted ambitions. As I backed away from the work table, a realization struck me. I was not alone in the basement. A faint whisper, barely audible, came from the shadows. My flashlight flickered, casting erratic beams of light that revealed a figure standing in the corner of the room, a figure with a face twisted in agony, its body a fusion of flesh and machinery. I stumbled back in horror, my heart racing as the figure stepped into the feeble light. It reached out to me with a hand that was both human and mechanical, its fingers twitching in a grotesque dance. The voice that emerged from its lips was a gurgling mix of human speech and distorted machinery.
We are the result of her experiments, trapped in this liminal existence.
The figure rasped, its eyes pleading.
Help us find release, end to our suffering.
My mind whirled as I stared at the abomination before me. The whispers, the experiments. It was all too much to comprehend. Without thinking, I turned and fled from the room, slamming the heavy door shut behind me. The whispers followed me, their chorus of agony echoing through the basement. I stumbled up the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest as I burst into the living room. The storm outside had intensified, rain pelting against the windows, as if nature itself was protesting the horrors that I had uncovered. I locked the basement door, collapsing onto the couch, my mind racing with a whirlwind of emotions. The night passed in a haze of sleeplessness and dread. The memories of the experiments, the whispers, and the twisted figure haunted my dreams, twisting and contorting like the abominations my grandmother had created. The morning light brought little solace, and I knew that I could never look at my grandmother's house the same way again. When my grandmother returned, I confronted her about the basement, the experiments, and the whispers that had driven me to the brink of insanity. Her face paled, and she admitted to her actions, her voice trembling with regret. She explained that she had been driven by a desperate desire to understand the mysteries of life and death, and in her pursuit of knowledge, she had inadvertently unleashed horrors beyond comprehension. As the years passed, the memory of that night continued to haunt me. The basement remained locked, its secrets hidden from the world. I moved on with my life, but the whispers and the horrors of the experiments lingered in my mind, a reminder that sometimes the darkness that lurks beneath the surface can be more horrifying than anything we can imagine. And so, the basement at my grandmother's house became a forbidden place, a room filled with echoes of experiments that had gone horribly wrong. The whispers that had drawn me there served as a grim reminder that some doors are best left closed, some secrets best left buried in the depths of darkness. Over the years, I couldn't shake the feeling that the experiments my grandmother had conducted had left a lasting impact on the house itself. The atmosphere grew more oppressive, the creaks and groans of the old building taking on a more sinister tone. It was as if the very walls held the memories of the abominations that had been created in that basement laboratory. My relationship with my grandmother became strained as I grappled with the knowledge of her disturbing past. She had repented for her actions, but the weight of her deeds hung heavily between us. We spoke less and less, the silence serving as a constant reminder of the horrors that had been unearthed. One day, I received a call from my grandmother's neighbor. She explained that my grandmother had passed away in her sleep and that her last wish was for me to take care of her affairs and to decide the fate of her home. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. The woman who had been a source of warmth and comfort throughout my childhood was now gone, leaving behind a legacy of darkness and dread. Returning to the house was a bittersweet experience. Memories of laughter and love mingled with the knowledge of the experiments that had stained its history. The whispers that had once drawn me to the basement were gone, replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to hang in the air like a heavy fog. As I sorted through my grandmother's belongings, I stumbled upon her old journals. They detailed her experiments, her motivations, and her regrets. Reading her words, I gained a deeper understanding of the desperation that had driven her to delve into the realm of the unknown. She had sought answers to questions that should never have been asked, and in doing so, she had unleashed horrors beyond her comprehension. In the midst of the journals, I found a single entry that sent a shiver down my spine. It spoke of a ritual, a desperate attempt to undo the atrocities she had committed. The details were cryptic, the words laden with a sense of urgency. It seemed that my grandmother had sought redemption in her final days, a way to release the tortured souls she had trapped within her experiment. Driven by a sense of responsibility, I decided to follow the instructions outlined in the journal. The ritual required gathering specific ingredients and performing a series of intricate steps. It was a chilling experience, the air growing heavy with a palpable energy as I followed the ancient instructions. As I completed the final step, the atmosphere in the room seemed to shift. The air vibrated with an otherworldly energy, and the temperature dropped as if a presence had entered the space. Shadows danced along the walls, and a soft whisper filled the room. Not the haunting, tormenting whispers of before, but a sound that held a mixture of sorrow and relief. A figure materialized before me, its form ethereal and indistinct. It was the same figure I had encountered in the basement years ago. A twisted fusion of flesh and machinery. Its eyes held a sadness that transcended its monstrous appearance, and its voice echoed with a mix of human emotion and mechanical resonance.
We are grateful for your efforts for attempting to right the wrongs that were done.
The figure said, its voice a haunting echo.
Our existence was born from pain and desperation, but you have given us a chance at release.
Tears filled my eyes as I stared at the apparition before me. The weight of the basement's secrets, my grandmother's regret, and the suffering of the experiment seemed to hang in the air. The figure's form wavered, its features shifting as if struggling to maintain its cohesion. And then, with a final whisper of gratitude, the figure dissolved into the air, its presence fading until only an echo remained. The room felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted, and the shadows that had haunted the house seemed to retreat. In the following days, I made the decision to sell my grandmother's house. The memories it held were too painful, the echoes of experiments and the whispers of suffering too difficult to bear. As the new owners took possession, I hoped that they would find happiness and create new memories within its walls, ones that would overshadow the darkness that had once resided there. And as I walked away from the house for the last time, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. The whispers had finally found their peace, the experiments had been given release, and my grandmother's legacy had been put to rest. The basement, once a place of horrors, had become a reminder that even in the face of darkness, there is hope for redemption and a chance to make amends for the mistakes of the past.